Hello again and welcome to AirgunWeb.com's video reviews. My name is Rick Eutsler and I'm glad that you've decided to join us again today. We're going to take a look at the brand new Benjamin Discovery pre-charged pneumatic rifle kit. I love pre-charged pneumatics. Unfortunately, they're one, expensive to purchase, two, they're expensive to fill. So if you're on a budget, it's very difficult to get into pre-charged pneumatic rifles. Well, Benjamin has completely changed that story. This kit retails for about $400, and while that still seems a little pricey, you have to remember that it includes the high pressure pump allowing you to fill this rifle over and over and over again. The pump is also usable on other pre-charged pneumatics, so once you get this kit, it opens up the entire realm of pre-charged pneumatic rifles. Today we're going to look at this rifle. We're also going to look at how to attach a scope and how to sight in a scope. I had somebody recently ask me, what's the quickest way to attach a scope to my rifle and get it sighted in? Well, I'd like to show you some tips that I use to get on target quickly. But right now, let's take a look at the gun.
As we begin to take a look at the Benjamin Discovery, you're going to notice some pretty distinct similarities between a lot of other Crosman guns, particularly the 1760 SE and the 2260 SE. This gun shares a lot of the same styling and configuration. The big difference, if you notice, is underneath the barrel is the large air reservoir where your pressurized air will be stored while you shoot. That reservoir holds 2,000 psi. Another nice feature is the front and rear fiber optic Williams sights, which makes this gun very usable for open sight shooting. Standard bolt action to load and fire the gun. The triggers, your standard Crosman 2260 trigger. Another nice feature is the built-in pressure gauge. The pump is a really nice pump. It is very heavy duty. It will pump up to 3,600 psi. Fortunately, the Benjamin Discovery operates nominally at only 2,000 psi. So while you'd be pumping a whole lot longer on other pre-charged pneumatic rifles, the Discovery lets you get shooting very quickly at only 2,000 psi. I managed to get between 30 and 40 solid shots between fills, which was really nice. It gives you the benefit of rapid shooting, but it also gives you the power that surpasses many Magnum spring guns. All in all, I'm very happy with the gun. Filling the Benjamin Discovery is pretty straightforward. You attach the quick disconnect to the front of the air reservoir and you begin pumping. Initially, it's very easy to pump. There doesn't take much effort at all. However, when you start reaching 1,000 to, well, 1,000, 1,500, as you get closer to 2,000 psi, it gets much more difficult. As you can see, I'm reaching that level now, and it gets harder and harder, and I've actually really got to put my weight into it to continue to fill the rifle. Fortunately, it doesn't take many pumps to fill this rifle, even from empty. Actually, it took about 100 and some odd strokes to completely fill the gun from empty. In between shooting, it took anywhere between 40 and 50 strokes to bring it back up to full charge. According to Benjamin, you get about one stroke equals one shot. So all in all, I think it's a great trade-off. When you're done, you simply check the gauge, release the bleed valve so you can disconnect the rifle, and you're ready to go. There's a lot to consider when picking a scope and a set of mounts for your rifle. For this application, I've chosen to use a Leapers 3x9 scope and a set of their AccuShot high mount rings, which should give me enough clearance to easily get the pellet loaded into the breech. When you're mounting a scope, one of the important things to remember is that you have a secure means of holding the rifle while you do your work. Not having a shooter's box or some other means of holding that rifle steady will really cause you some grief. So get something. They're fairly inexpensive, and then you will have a lot less problems in the future when you're working on your rifles. It really is nice to have a solid platform to work from. The actual process of mounting a scope is pretty straightforward. I begin by getting a basic idea of where I'm going to want to put the scope. I've mounted a lot of scopes over the years, and I kind of know where the position needs to be for my eye relief to really work the best. And the eye relief is that distance between your eye and the rear of the scope that lets the picture be good and clear in a comfortable position. Because I know that for me the scope has to sit kind of far back. So I began mounting my rings, what makes the most sense to me. Once you get them basically on the rifle, the rest is pretty academic. It's just a matter of loosening up the screws and setting your scope up there, making sure that your crosshairs are square. The up and down is perfectly up and down, and the horizontal is perfectly horizontal. I do most of this simply just by eyeballing it. One of the things I can recommend right off is don't ever tighten the mounts down with an Allen wrench until you're good and ready to do so, because you're going to be adjusting that as you go. I usually just finger tighten them to give me the flexibility of moving things around. Other than that, it really is a straightforward process, as you can see here. With the scope carefully resting in the mounts, I will pick up the rifle and make sure that it's leveled and make sure that the eye relief is positioned where I want it. Then I'll carefully set the rifle back down and add the top part to the scope mounts. And then I'll do any final adjustments that I may need to do. It's important to remember when you're adding the tops to your scope mounts not to over tighten the screws, which is pretty easy to do given that the mounts are usually made out of aluminum. As you tighten the screws, make sure to go slowly, one screw at a time. Don't go too far and don't go too fast. And remember that you may still need to do some adjustments before you're completely done, so I wouldn't tighten them down all the way just yet. Make sure that you've got the scope exactly where you want it before you really tighten those screws down. With our scope all tightened down, we're ready to start doing some shooting. Now what I do is I have a nice sand pile outside my shed, and I'm able to pick a spot just in front of it in the dirt where I can very clearly see where the pellets are hitting. Since we're using a variable power scope, I'll set it on 3 so that I can get the widest possible field of vision. It usually takes about 10 to 15 shots before I'm pretty much where I want to be. One thing to remember is that at 10 or 15 yards, it takes a lot of clicks to move the pellet just a little ways. So don't be afraid to give those knobs a good half turn. Remember, we're just trying to get close, and we'll do our fine tuning all on the range. Here we are set up to begin shooting. I'm using a shooting rest because this rifle has no recoil, and it'll really help me get the best accuracy and help me really dial in that scope. We start at 15 yards. Here are 6 shots at our 15-yard mark, and as you can see, other than being a little bit high, we're actually shooting pretty well. I never touched the scope since we left the sand pile, so it looks like my sand pile method is a pretty darn good way of getting the scope basically on target. This next set of shots was taken at 25 yards. Now while this group looks large, it actually looks larger than it is because we're zoomed in on that target. It actually measured about maybe 1.25 inches. I haven't found the most accurate pellet yet on this rifle, so I'm actually pretty happy with what we're getting, and I haven't made a single adjustment since we left the sand pile.
I'm going to wrap up this introduction on the Benjamin Discovery. At 15 yards, we shot a very nice group. We haven't picked the right pellet yet. I'm very satisfied with what we got. As we backed up to 25 yards, group opened up a little bit as I expected. I'm going to go work with this gun a little bit so we can get ready for part 2. Hopefully we'll find the right pellet and we'll see some really good accuracy out of Benjamin Discovery. Thanks again for joining us here at AirgunWeb.com and our video reviews. I really appreciate your comments and your suggestions, so please keep them coming. Thank you very much.